always sort of had my reservations with Rob Zombie's legacy. I think because of the fact that Rob Zombie has a legitimate career as a horror movie director, and because of his image, he is seen as a genuinely spooky or dark or weird, unsettling sort of figure. The thing you need to understand about Rob Zombie is that he's actually a schlock master. His horror aesthetic is the kind of stuff that predates slasher movies, and it's often presented in a more humorous context. It seems a bit more tongue-in-cheek to me than straight up attempting to scare or shock people. Think less Evil Dead 1 and more Evil Dead 2. And because of that, I've never really been sure how to take his music, because it's so over the top in kind of a comical way. A lot of his music is good, a lot of it is catchy, I enjoy a lot of it, but there's a limit to how much I can connect to this kind of stuff. The best way I can put it is that it strikes me as sort of the bad-on-purpose version of a so-bad-it's-good film. Rob Zombie's like the Sharknado of 90s music. And I've always gotten the sense that Rob Zombie would have taken it as a compliment for one of his films to be featured on Mystery Science Theater 3000. But we are here to talk about his music for the most part, so... Rob Zombie was born Robert Bartlett Cummings in 1965 in Massachusetts. His parents both worked in the carnival when he was young, which, if you are familiar with his work, explains a lot. And he formed the band White Zombie while going to art school in New York. Now, White Zombie were an underground cult band that were sort of known by reputation in the 1980s before they broke through to the mainstream. And a lot of their early albums sort of sound like standard issue metal, underground metal of that time to me. Whereas the White Zombie and the Rob Zombie stuff that you're probably familiar with from the 90s has more of a dance/industrial sort of bent to them. The early White Zombie stuff is more straight up metal. And it didn't really break into the mainstream until it started adding on this industrial sound sort of influence. A lot of it reminding me a lot of Ministry and Revolting Cocks. Eventually they were signed to Geffen Records, and they got some radio airplay thanks to their singles Thunderkiss 65 and More Human Than Human. And just before they broke up, they released a remix album called Super Sexy Swinging Sounds. And I feel like this release is sort of where Rob Zombie's specific musical identity was best established. Because when I listen to his solo stuff, it almost seems more accurate to refer to him as a producer than a musician. His solo debut album is called Hellbilly Deluxe, 13 Tales of Cadaverous Cavorting Inside the Spook Show International. Basically an extension of the stuff that White Zombie was doing at the time, while at the same time being a celebration of cheesy, gloriously campy B-movie excess. The two biggest singles from it were Dragula and Living Dead Girl, the former of which was used in The Matrix. By this point in the 90s, dance rock style music had been around for some time, and this kind of fit right in that style. It also fit in quite well with the new metal stuff that was starting to break through to the mainstream around this time. A lot of the stuff on the album is sort of these instrumental filler tracks that, to me, are almost more interesting than the hit singles. And they sound sort of like legit haunted house music at times. In 1999, Rob Zombie released a remix album of the songs from Hellbilly Deluxe called American Made Music to Strip Eye, which really sort of tells you where his priorities lie. It's more about sort of cheap body dance music than it is about actual frightening, genuine horror music. Like, compared to the death metal and doom metal bands that are around at the same time, Rob Zombie seems like a teddy bear. But it's fun music, and it's catchy, which made it enjoyable in its own right, even if it's not really convincingly dark or unnerving. Rob Zombie's released several other solo albums, including a covers album, after the end of the 90s.
Welcome, boils and ghouls, to the Dr. Spooky Show with your lovable host, Dr. Spooky, that's me. Today on the show, we have a frighteningly fiendish and ghoulishly ghastly guest.
He's also directed a number of movies which you probably are familiar with if you're a horror fan. To me, it's not really surprising that Rob Zombie started a career as a horror movie director. What is surprising to me is that he ever bothered with music in the first place. You know, it seems like that's kind of what he wanted to do all along. But I enjoy his music even if I don't know quite what to make of it. Sorry, I don't mean to criticize it as much as I am. It's just, I guess for me there's a sort of distance to this tongue-in-cheek approach that he's taking. There's nothing wrong with not taking yourself too seriously, I guess, but there are times where I just kind of wish he would go for it. On the other hand, I have seen a couple of his horror movies, and I'm kind of glad that he shows restraint in his music that he does not show in those. Yeah, I guess in general I prefer someone a little darker and a little more real, a little more convincing. But if you like fun, campy, spooky type of stuff, this is the kind of music that you should get. I am Jacob, and this was Rad 90s Music. I'll see you sometime in the future.